if it's only the the absenteeism or the turnover, but it could it's around $12,000 of euro per year per people. So it's the cost of let's say the turnover on absenteeism in company is very huge. And what we forecast in our scenarios is we are able to, and according to studies, of course, we would be able to reduce the cost of the, let's say, of turnover and absenteeism up to 3 million euro per 1,000 employee.
Hey guys, before we get started, I have one quick favor to ask of you. Can you please hit the subscribe button so that more people can find the show? Thank you. Nicola, we were just talking about the intersection of technology and workplace health, and you teach corporate social responsibility at universities. What is corporate social responsibility and why is it important in the workplace?
Thank you very much for the question. Corporate social responsibility is at the intersection of our environmental responsibility, ethical responsibility, and economic responsibility. And why it's so important is because it enhances brand reputation, it builds the stronger communities, it encourages, of course, environmental sustainability, and improves employee morale and attract top talents. And it can lead to long-term business success and fostering customer loyalty. So that's why it's so important.
And is it important because it's regulated, that it's obligatory, mandatory for companies to attain a certain standard of corporate social responsibility, or is it a matter of work ethics?
Oh, it's totally among work ethics and much more big company, and especially big company focus on that because it permits them to have the top talents, and it's good also for business. So when you take care of your people, you take care of your customer too. So that's why it's so important, even if it's not mandatory.
And is it something that is part of the, let's say, the company's branding, that they can say they have a certain certification or label that says, oh, this is a corporate socially responsible company? And is that why they do it? Or is it because they realize as a performance metric, having corporate social responsibility, it helps the company in terms of performance?
Oh,
What
of
is the
course.
driving factor?
Yeah, of course, when as a company you want to demonstrate, let's say, results, you can be, for example, certified B Corp or EcoVadis Gold or Platinum, and that means that you have, let's say, some proof of achievement toward this let's say social responsibility project you put in your company. So yeah, definitely it's good for business, and it's these let's say labels are testimony of let's say achievements of let's say the top 1% or the top 10% company.
So yeah, I see that, like, let's say the B Corp label, it could be on anything from food to clothes to any company, and it's like, okay, is it something that's environmentally friendly, or is it like a kind of a great place to work? What is the meaning of these labels? Because we see them on different companies and different brands, but it's not explained what it really means.
Oh, it's a very interesting question. For example, for B Corp, it focus on result on output. In EcoVadis, they focus also on the documentation, and let's say if you put in place, for example, if you are already certified in quality, in environment, in safety at work, and then you have other proof that, for example, you result in environmental sustainability and things like that. You are assessed on these documents, and you have a score based on these the element you let's say you forward it to the platform, and based on that you have a score, and the score determine if you will be platinum, if you will be gold, or and so that for B Corp there is no, let's say, level, so you are B Corp or you are not B Corp, and the threshold is quite high. So companies who are B Corp are definitely companies that take care of environment of their people, and I think that it's even more relevant that good place at work, because good place at work are let's say it's still good to be good place at work, but if you are in addition of that EcoVadis Platinum and B Corp, yes, definitely it's a company that have a good let's say reputation, and yeah, definitely I would say both are the best.
So when it comes to people burning out at work and staff turnover, having these badges or having these certifications such as B Corp, or I think another one I've seen is like Great Place to Work. And these kind of certifications and these badges you might see on different companies that they kind of hold as badges of honor. But in reality, do you see that it helps a lot in terms of having a healthy workplace culture, or having less of a turnover rate, or higher performance metrics in the company having these certifications?
Oh, I think that it's a starting point. And if you want to be the leader in your market, you have to be the best people, the best culture, and the as much as certification are possible. But what we see today is even in big company with certification, they still have some issue with turnover and absenteeism. And I think that every company face these, let's say, are struggling with turnover of their people and absenteeism. And that's why they could do more to resolve this issue.
I suppose the line there of trying to understand more of how they can resolve it is that they need to understand why it's happening, or they need to be able to track some form of metrics.
Yes.
And that's what you have here with Cardyio, that you can monitor um, employees with anonymous data, and be able to and you can describe this a lot better than me. It's how you can monitor employees, or monitor the performance or well-being of employees in the company um, across a broad range. So you get company specific data, and you get an idea of, okay, some employees are doing well, other employees may not be doing well, but we don't know who it is. So it reflects on the system, not on individual employees. Is that correct?
Yeah, totally. Just before talking to us, just to know what exists today. Today you have, let's say, qualitative assessment tool like a barometer. So you ask people how do they feel, for example, each 6 months. And you also have tools, for example, Xerox put that in place recently. And those tools are able to track if how long you are in the company, if your salary if you have some increase of your salary during the next year, thing like that. And it's supposed to know the probability you have to leave the company. But the company struggle with this tool because even if they are quite interesting, they are not 100% satisfied with that. And what we try to do at Cardyio is to put in place a quantitative tool, which is totally, let's say, different that the other tool I just mentioned. And the idea was to say employee don't even know how they feel, because you have some people who I have interviewed many people who did burnout, and some of them told me that they didn't see it. They understood they had a burnout because they called their practitioner, their general practitioner, and they say, "Oh, you are in burnout." So if these people you were let's say ask how they are going, even a couple weeks before, they certainly would respond that, yeah, everything is right. So we needed a more, let's say, objective tool, and that's what we have we work on at Cardio. And how does it work? We are we use a tool called a KPI called heart rate variability. And this is completely different than the heartbeat, because when you, for example, when you go to the sport, your heartbeat will increase, but your variability will be stable, because one is very will vary a lot on if you are doing sport or not. The other will be a long-term indicator, let's say, and we rely on these indicators, which are more than 20,000 study committee study, scientific committee study, and we are let's say it permits to provide a very accurate result, and we are able to predict turnover based on this physiological data, which are of course aggregated, which are of course anonymized and stored in data centers that are able to let's say carry on medical data. So it's something which is very important for us, and it's not possible to, let's say, to individualize the data of each person. So even the general practitioner of the company is not able to see the data of each employee. It's let's say nobody has access to this data. Only the person in his phone is able to see his data because he's the owner of the data, but nobody else.
So what you said there about the qualitative data, and when you, let's say, it's kind of like just giving someone a survey, and that data differs from day to day. If you give that person that survey every day of the week, they'll probably give a different answer. So that the problem with qualitative data, and if you're only doing it maybe once every month or once every 6 months or once a year, then people can give very different answers depending on if they're having a good day or if they're having a bad day, or if they feel like they deserve a raise because they put a lot of work into a project, or maybe they've come back from vacation and they're a bit more relaxed. They might give a different answer. So it's a pinpoint of just that one day when they do that survey. And that qualitative data can be very inaccurate. But what you have here, when you're measuring the HRV, the heart rate variability, is consistent daily measurements that we cannot, like, in our minds, manipulate that result. We cannot manipulate. Let's say if you were given a survey, you can say, if I give a certain answer, maybe I'll get a pay raise. Or, if I give a certain answer, it might backfire on me because I won't get the pay raise if I say I'm too happy here. and you can manipulate it because you can decide on how you answer the question. But if you're measuring biometric data, it's a lot more difficult to manipulate that unless you have a way of rejigging your monitor or messing with it. Or one of the easiest ways you can manipulate it is by taking care of your own health. And so I think that the point here is having a quantitative, consistent data over time is a lot more accurate, and tracking our biometric data that we cannot very easily manipulate one way or another gives a lot clearer picture to the company of where they're at a certain date or a certain time over a long period.
Yeah, it's totally true. What I can add is heart rate variability give insight into how flexible and adaptive your heart and nervous system are. So it's totally in phase with what you say. And there is many study that show that let's say for example, one study of 2007 from the Journal of Management Psychology say that if you ask your people 20% high resources, it increased burnout by 50%. So it means that when you ask too much to your people, there will be consequences of that. And today, manager and leader don't necessarily internalize when they ask too much for their people, and there is backfire of that. And our barometer, quantitative barometer in a daily update is able to, let's say, to understand if you ask too much to your people, and if it's the case, the company has the possibility to have an action plan to avoid bad consequences like increase of the turnover, increase of absenteeism. Because of course, the person who is likely to have a burnout will be at home and will not be able to work for weeks, for months, maybe for years. So it's really something that has to be taken into account.
Yes, and that's something that can be, again, can be a very high cost for companies.
Yes,
If you,
millions
again, you take care of those
euros.
employees.
Yes.
So how much is that hidden cost that we're seeing in employee well-being when they need to take time off for mental health leave or for burnout and or sick leave? And sometimes it doesn't even show itself up as a long period of 6 months or 2 years out of work. It can show up as sometimes it's just people getting ill. They might be more susceptible to getting a cold or picking up the flu because their immune system is suppressed because of the stress. So sometimes it's not even seen as mental health leave, but they're just more prone to getting sick. And that also has its hidden costs. But overall, the effect of stress and of burnout and of illness on the company, how much of a cost are we seeing on this on being on companies?
Oh, it's according to studies, it depends if it's only the the absenteeism or the turnover, but it could it's around $12,000 of euro per year per people. So it the cost of let's say the turnover and absenteeism in company is very huge. And what we forecast in our scenarios is we are able to, and according to studies, of course, we would be able to reduce the cost of let's say, of turnover and absenteeism up to 3 million euro per 1,000 employee. So it's around 2.5, from 2.5 to 3.5 millions of euro per 1,000 employee. So imagine a company of 10,000 people. It means 30 million per year. So I think even if for a big company, 30 million is a lot of money, especially if it's hidden cost.
And even on top of that, it might be, let's say, the hidden cost of, okay, not even just the cost of, let's say, absenteeism or training, or let's say hiring new employee, or again onboarding, or paying sick leave, or paid days off. There's also the hidden cost of that person not performing, even when they're not absent, even if they're showing up to work, but they're not performing at their best because they're not being taken care of, or they're not aware that their health is deteriorating, they're not showing up at their best at work. And that's also another hidden cost that's more difficult to monitor. If this person is not performing at their best, then the company's output is not going to be at its peak either.
Yes, actually, we know more than 100 years ago that um, let's say, if you want to improve the productivity, is not a matter of improving the light, is not a matter of improving the heat. It's a matter of take care of your people. And if the employee believe that his company take care of him, then he will improve his productivity. It will be huge. For example, in some company in France, a company called LDLC, a computer company, they reduced from 5 days a week of work to 4 days a week. So from 35 hour per week to 32 hour per week. And they forecasted a decrease of productivity because you work let's say one day less. And they were very surprised because their people were less stressed and have more energy. They are able to be more than 20% more efficient. So they were surprised with that, but it's because the people of this company were aware that their CEO really take care of them. So I think that it's a really good example of counterintuitive, let's say, measure. So it works actually.
So they were 20% more productive when they were working 20% less.
Yes.
Because I've seen two sides of the argument, where between the 5 day and the 4 day week. And some people have argued that having a 4 day week, that they were still expected to do 5 days of work within 4 days. And as a result, they were not taking any coffee breaks, any toilet breaks, or anything in their 4 day slot, because they were expected to have the same output within 4 days instead of 5 days.
Oh,
And
it
that came from
depends.
a toxic workplace culture then, where they were being told they were working less hours, but they were still expected to have the same outcome of 5 days.
I think that it depends of the culture, of course. And
Yes.
your point is interesting. What I've heard is, if you work the same amount of hour per week in 4 days than in 5 days, it doesn't work, because it's exactly what you mentioned. You don't have time to talk with your and things like that. But if they reduce also the number of hours, but they keep the same salary. and let's say that there were a synergy effect, and the people, because the people were really happy to work and really happy to be, let's say, to have this consideration, the output was that. But of course, it's an example, and maybe it's not. That's why, let's say, that we need a barometer to let's say to make sure that you don't have this side effect. Of course, I completely agree.
And in terms of, let's say, before anyone implements these things like the 4-day work week, what strategies, now you've mentioned the one you said that Xerox have this qualitative interview or qualitative survey. Are there any other tools that are currently being used by HR or by health and safety to monitor employees' well-being or performance metrics that are currently being used that maybe they might be outdated or maybe they're not as effective as they could be?
Oh, actually, there is many tools you can use, but most of the tools that are currently used are, let's say, quite for example, in big company, the best that you can have is training. The best that you can have is a phone number that you can phone if you don't, if you feel bad, to talk with a psychologist. You have also, let's say, as I mentioned, barometer with a classical question. And you have, let's say, tools that monitor, let's say, how long you are in the company and the output of your annual survey. But what we see is we give the possibility to the company to assess what they do and where they do it, because it's we have the geolocalization, because you can see a map of your country, and the places where it happened, and also the work, or the work, the unity of work. So, for example, people who work in research and development, people who work at the, let's say, at the cleaning of the company, or thing like that. So you have the let's say the category, and we are able to give an information day to day, in an information before even the people understand that they are stressed. For example, for myself, I use the tool every day, and some day I feel tired, but I don't really know. Do I am tired because I am a bit lazy this morning? Do I am tired because um, because my body say to me that you have to let's say to let go a little bit. So I use this biofeedback for me to, let's say, to understand best my when I am really when I need to do a break. So I would say that.
Yeah, 'cause I even noticed because I wear a Whoop and I can track my HRV and I can track my recovery from that. But some days the result might seem a little skewed, where I might feel great, that I think I got a good night's sleep, I'm full of energy, and I look at my recovery level and it's in the red. It says like 3%. And I'm like, oh wow, that looks really bad. And then I'm like, should I feel tired because my recovery wasn't great? Or should I just uh, think of how I feel right now? Before I looked at the app, I thought I was really energized this morning, and go with that. And sometimes there's this mental switch. It was like, oh, my recovery isn't what I thought it was. Maybe I should be resting, or maybe I should take a more relaxed day. It's kind of listening to your body signals, but also wondering, am I being lazy, or has something else influenced me today that is making me want to take a step back, or should I power through it? And it's trying to find that balance of uh, working with intention, but also knowing your capacity, and and being like, I know I have to get stuff done, but I also have to respect my energy, respect my capacity and recovery. And that's where it can be difficult to find the balance. But I find with tracking something like HRV that I can be like, okay, my heart rate variability has been low today, but it was really high last week. What have I been doing differently in between last week and today that may have affected it? Maybe I didn't get enough sleep last night, or maybe I didn't drink enough water yesterday because I was so busy in meetings that I didn't take any coffee or water breaks. And I can look back, and again, as you said, monitoring that data daily gives you, especially when you can track your own personal data and see your own trends, that you can be like, okay, it was really good last week and it's not doing so well this week. So I can do something myself to change that. And beyond what the company sees in a larger perspective, it helps employees to better understand themselves.
Yes, I think that it's not good to go to the opposite and be obsessed by the number. I would say that I think that a healthy relationship with this tool is to say, okay, what is my tendency? For example, it's okay to be, let's say, I would even say it's okay to be stressed during the week if during the weekend you can relax, because we know we all know that um, working is very hard, and we don't want to say to the people that they will not be stressed. um, uh, they, they still be stressed, but they will know it, and they will be able to understand when they have to let go a little bit, on when it's okay. Of course, I prefer that the people are at their absolutely top level 100% of the time, but we know that it's a bit utopic. So that's why we provide some exercise to help. For example, what you mentioned earlier, that some days you were not at the top, then we will propose some exercise that you can do during work to, let's say, to feel better and to improve your HVR. That permits to wait, let's say, a more organizational measure, that more training, that more people, to hire more people if you are overwhelmed. So we propose immediate, let's say, exercise for the person if they want, of course. And after, in a second, let's say, a second step for us, we will propose action plans that will be assessed by our barometer. So it will be huge, because we don't we the company itself will be able to assess our action plan. It's not that you have a person who come and we say you should do this and that, and then the person leave and you don't know if it was accurate or not. So we can use our tool to assess um, action plans that are already in place, or new action plans, or we will be able to assess our own action plan, because it's two tools which are completely not correlated. So you could assess a certain action plan in a certain location, in a certain category of people, independently of the barometer.
What I like about this is you're getting real-time data on how employee well-being is across the company. So it's like a proactive measure that if you can track it in real time, you can see when it starts to go into the red in a certain department, or it might be coming up to the end of a quarter and things are really intense. And you can identify different times of the year where there might be higher levels of stress or something affecting employee well-being. There could be a very important meeting, or there could be a town hall meeting or a speech that might be coming up, or a very important announcement, or there could be something in the economy, and people might be just fearful. In general, there might have been nothing communicated within the company, but they might just be fearful that there's instability in the market. And by having consistent data over time, you might be able to correlate that. Whereas if you're reactive and the only way that you have of measuring whether there's a high staff turnover rate is the fact that employees are leaving, or that they're all on sick leave, or that performance levels are dropping, but you don't know why, because you're waiting until it happens before you do something about it, that it's very reactive. And I feel that's the case for many bigger companies that feel that they cannot track everyone. It's harder to manage a larger company without having the right systems in place. So they have a very basic system where, oh, someone has handed in their notice, they're leaving in 3 weeks' time or 3 months' time. Okay, let's have a meeting with them before they leave and see why they decided to leave. Rather than a proactive approach of having performance reviews. Okay, someone might say at their performance review that they're not feeling great, and then, but this might be only a check-in every 3, 6, or 12 months. Okay, you're getting how they feel 2 or 3 times a year on a certain day, and even at that, they could be anxious meeting their line manager, and they might be just expressing how they feel on that one day of the year. So it's very a very small amount of data, a very small amount of information based on that one employee on one given day. And then you're interpreting that as how they feel for the other 364 days of the year. So by what you have here with biometric data, tracking on the daily, tracking consistently, and it's harder to manipulate. And once people get into the habit of tracking it, it becomes they're less conscious of it, and they become less anxious or less aware of the fact that they're using it. So it's harder to manipulate the data in any way that could potentially affect or cause like outliers on a trend, because people cannot, as I said, they can. It's very difficult to alter something like your heart rate variability just by thinking of a different answer, a different result. You cannot do that. So I really feel that tracking this with biometric data is the only way that we can get accurate, true results or true indicators of employee well-being. It's the same as when we go to a doctor. If we go to a general practitioner and they ask us how we feel, because they can check our pulse, or they can check our temperature, but they don't know, like, we can tell them we have a headache, or we can tell them that we have a pain somewhere in our arm or in our leg, but they cannot see the pain. They are going by the symptoms that we tell them, and they're trying to monitor from the symptoms we tell them. But maybe we don't understand why we're feeling that pain. Or we might feel the pain in our arm, and it's like, is it let's say a bruise, or is it muscle damage? We don't know. So being able to monitor something like biometric data, like the heart rate variability, as you say, that's real data that no one can have their own individual experience, like a pain response, where it can differ a lot between person to person. So I think that's something that is a concrete metric that can be tracked over a large population of people, let's say beyond, let's say 50, 500, or 5,000. And as one other point you mentioned was, let's say, if you had a lot of companies, um, let's say in Europe, in continental Europe, and we had lots of different companies using them, would someone be able to zoom out and look out and see, based on all this anonymous data, would we be able to have a heat map of which countries have higher or lower heart rate variability within companies, and see then, from, let's say, from a wider scale, which countries have better employee performance? Is that something that could also be tracked and be seen from an international level? Or is it something that is like, oh no, this is all very company specific and it's up to the company whether they want to share that data or not?
Oh, I would say it's changed everything, because it's like you are blind and you can see. So company are quite blind today because they only can see qualitative data. So it's necessary but incomplete. And in traditional barometer, you can challenge your company toward other big company of the industry anonymously. And we could imagine, of course, to benchmark anonymously a company to with this qualitative data, of course. And it could, let's say, leverage a positive output to, let's say, to say, oh, I am not the best of my industry in terms of average well-being of my employee, quantitatively speaking. What can I do to improve that? And I think that it's when you are the best of your industry, then you want to be the best of all industry. Um, and I think that yeah, it's something that could be very interesting to show to the CEO of the um, uh, the head of HR, something like that, to, let's say, to as a decision making tool to improve, let's say, it's a quite a gamification in a way, because when you are red you want to be yellow, and when you're yellow you want to be green. So I enjoyed the fact that it could be a positive gamification for the head of the company, because they know that even if they want to, let's say, to have stressed people, they will know that people that are in red or in yellow are most likely to leave the company, or to cost money to the company, because they will be less productive. They will be more likely to go in absenteeism. So I would say that the only reasonable action of C-level would be to promote a green level of let's say resilience of their teams.
Yeah, again, the important aspect is that because the data is anonymous, they cannot say, oh, I see a lot of red in that department, so I can speculate who that red person might be.
Yeah, totally.
And then they'll target that person, being like, oh, there's a high chance that they are going to leave the company. Whereas when it's completely anonymous, they might think that it's the one person, but that one person might be extremely focused on their work, and they could be in the green. And it could be the manager behind them who is completely stressed out and is just very good at hiding it. Or
Yeah,
they
yeah.
seem very
And
calm and
what
collected,
is,
but they're in
yeah,
the red.
what is interesting is to say, supposingly you have 200 people that are, let's say, in a same place and same work unity, thing like that. And imagine is these 200 people, you have 1% which are in the yellow, and 2 weeks after it goes to 5%, and 2 weeks after to 10%, let's say. So you could say, oh, but I am at 80% green, so it's okay. But what is exactly mean is that, oh, in average, your people are okay, but you are people that are more likely to indicate that it will become a majority of yellow. So we have the chance to have people that are more sensitive, and these people are like a probe to let's say, to forecast the future. So because these people have a more sensitive antenna, we rely on these people to say, oh, we have a tendency, underlying tendency to a degradation. So we are able to forecast multiple months from now that this tendency will become problematic, let's say. So even if we watch a big picture, we are able to understand these tendencies through those people who are more sensitive, of course, anonymously, but because we believe that burnout is organizational issue, and some people are more sensitive, so those people will help us, let's say, anonymously to understand what will is not seen by the other people, but that will be seen because their antenna are less sophisticated, let's say.
And for monitoring the data, how easy is it for employees to track their heart rate variability? So I know that there are certain devices like the Fitbit or the Garmin or the Apple Watch that they have these, let's say, metrics that they monitor. But let's say, is it dependent on all participating employees to have a smart wearable device like this so that they can monitor the heart rate variability?
Oh, um, of course, you have multiple tools that you can use. For example, you have this kind of tool which are thoracic belt. It's the tool which is the most accurate because it's directly the electric let's say it reads the electricity of the earth, so it's the more accurate. But those tools are not practical to use as a corporate level, so we will use let's say dedicated smartwatch, or let's say some are clinically proven, some are let's say mass market. So of course, for the clinical study we are going to do, we will use clinical grade smartwatch, but the clinical study will enable us to know if the noise provoked by the lowest quality of the sensor in the mass market product that quite everybody have is significant to, let's say, is permits us to have an acceptable level of error, even if it's not a clinical grade smartwatches. And we are also thinking about technology that you don't even need thoracic belt or a smartwatch, which are technology where you just need your smartphone on the camera and the let's say the flash of your smartphone, and you put your finger 1 minute and you let's say you have the data. It's something that we are working on because for some people in some use cases they will not they will disagree the fact that to wear a wearable. So our study showed that it can increase from 20% the number of people that are willing to use our technology if they don't have to wear a wearable. So that's why we are investigating also in that way.
That's interesting because I remember I had a Samsung phone, must be about 5 years ago, and part of it was again touching a sensor. There was like a biometric sensor on the back of the phone, for tracking stress. As it said, this was your stress level for today. So that must be something similar that they had back then. It was touching this black sensor just below the camera, and so that's interesting because yes, I know a lot of people who they have these wearables like the Apple Watch or the Garmin, and they say, "Oh, I'm only using it for tracking steps or tracking my activities," or they just think it's stylish, but they don't realize that they're tracking a lot more biometric data, and they don't know what to do with that, or they don't know how to interpret it.
Yeah, yes, of course. Oh, it's called the PPG, photoplethysmography, and the
PPG.
PPG is using your flash on your smartphone and using your finger to because the light of the flash will interact with your blood vessel in your finger, and the contraction of your heart will let's say darker the image or lighter the image, and with sophisticated algorithm it's possible to let's say deduce the HVR. So it's something that is a possibility too when people don't want to wear a wearable. And I can understand that some people don't want to wear something, and they would be more likely to use their finger for a minute because it's less invasive, and they still will be able to have a feedback, a biofeedback with that. So we investigate that because we are more likely a data processing company than a device company. We don't build smart watches or smart band. Because we believe that the value added is in the aggregation of the data, and to permit company to be data driven on this physiological data. So it's really the data driven which is the core of our strategy.
Yes, I think that's what it all comes down to. At the end of the day, when people see a certain outcome and people come to them with anecdotal data of, oh, this person is leaving because of reason A, B, and C. And they're like, are you sure that's the reason? Or is that just what they told you? Whereas if you have accurate, consistent data that's been tracked over a long period of time, that gives you like a heat map, a visualization, or trend data of what's been happening in the company over a certain period of time and how that may have affected what is currently happening within the company. If you can correlate that data, that's a lot more concrete and a lot easier for a company to work with and to manage. I mean, what isn't measured doesn't get managed. So I feel that this is something that is uh, not being utilized enough, or it's not being promoted enough within companies. That if corporate social responsibility is so important to companies and that they want to improve employee well-being, that they should be looking to get more employees on board with certain things like this. And I feel that the narrative at first from employees is, oh, HR is trying to track my data. HR is trying to track everything about me, rather than it being a collaborative effort of the company wanting to understand their employees on a deeper level, not to specifically target individual employees, but to have a health check, kind of like a health check of their workforce, and using that data to improve the workforce as a whole. And I feel that once company culture is clear and able to communicate that they want to improve the company as a whole, and that everyone can play their part simply by using this app and by logging their HRV every day. They can do it on work days, they can do it on their weekends, they can do it on their vacation days. And over a long period of time, not only is the company getting to see that they're improving the health of the workforce, but the individual employees can also get tips and action plans on how they can improve their heart rate variability, how they can improve their resilience, how they can improve their adaptability, how they regulate stress. So I feel this is a really accessible way for people to better understand the importance of improving their heart rate variability.
Yeah, and it enable also the fact to talk on this subject with your manager. More than 36% of the employee don't are afraid to talk of this subject with their manager or with their doctor in the company, because they, as you mentioned earlier, they are worried about backfire. And even head of general practitioner in company don't know how to address this problem, because the only way that they could do that is using our app, because the earth doesn't lie.
Yeah, and I can understand. Even in a previous job, I told HR that I was feeling stressed, and they said, "Oh, don't talk about stress around here. It makes us look bad." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And they said, "Oh, if employees are stressed, that means that this must not be a good place to work." And then I explained to them the reason why an employee is stressed is because they care about the work that they do. If they didn't care about the work that they do, they wouldn't feel stressed. They wouldn't care about the work.
Mm.
So there would be zero stress. So stress is our body responding to us caring about something that we do and caring about the result and how we get to that outcome. But by not managing our stress, that's where it takes an impact on our health. So if we cannot openly communicate and talk how we truly feel about stress, about our health, how our work is impacting our health, then that becomes a very difficult spot. No one can track that data then if people feel they cannot openly talk about that. By having these conversations, being able to say to a manager, I feel emotionally drained after this meeting, and I don't think I have the capacity to do work on project A, B, or C today. And the manager can say, okay, I understand that. How about you leave early today and come back for a fresh start tomorrow? Is going to be a lot more productive than that manager saying, I don't care about your stress or I don't care about your health. You work for the next 6 hours and get that project done. I feel that the first approach is going to be a lot more productive in the long run in keeping that employee than someone commanding authority and saying, I made that employee stay for another 6 hours to get that work done. They might get that work done or they might get it done to a certain level, but certainly not to the same level if they were at their best or in their peak or taking ownership of the work. There is, let's say, a resistance to uh, admitting that or coming to terms with the fact that people are stressed in the workplace, and we need to be open about having that conversation and being able to talk about our mental health and our well-being in the workplace and how we can improve that, rather than companies turning a blind eye to it and saying, oh, this is a great place to work. Nobody talks about ever being stressed. No one talks about it, so it doesn't exist. But they're not looking at the fact that nobody's talking about it doesn't mean that it's not happening. Just because nobody talks about it doesn't mean that it's not there. But by having a way of openly talking about, as you said, if I could openly talk about my heart rate variability to my manager and say like, oh, I'm looking at the app here and I'm in yellow, or I'm really close to going into the red. So what can we do just to make sure that, that this doesn't take an effect on my work? Maybe you can delegate someone to help me. And looking at it from a productive level, a proactive way of monitoring it, rather than someone being afraid to say, oh, I really don't want to show my manager that my HRV level is in the yellow and he's going to see me as a potential threat to the performance of the team. And he's going to tell me, don't you dare slip into the red. Having
Yeah.
those two narratives, it's like, don't you dare. I know you told me you were in the yellow last week. If someone has those two narratives in the back of their head, that they say, one, it's like, I can share with my manager and have a proactive approach, or I'm afraid to share with my manager because then I will be a target. I feel that companies need to be very open about how they will approach using information like this. That they say this is like a thermometer, or this is like a health check for the company, and we're not going to ridicule someone for having red HRV. This is coming from concern. Our main goal is for everyone here to stay in the company and how we can improve everyone to the green.
Yeah, I
And it's
wouldn't.
once people are open like that.
Yeah, as an employee, I wouldn't share this information with my manager because I would be scared of backfire. That's why we use it as a, let's say, as a aggregated tool, because um, it's it's totally okay to be yellow, or I would say if a person is in red and another person gets in red, it means that there is something that the HR department miss in this unity of work. And I would say maybe there is a new position in the company would be stress manager. Stress manager who will, let's say, who will carry the task to read these maps and to try to understand why in this specific place, in this specific work, what happened in this place. And I think that it would be really interesting to know how let's say how deep a company with use our data to, let's say, to do proactive things, because at least you will know as an employee, even in the worst case scenario, if your company don't do that much, at least you will be warm in advance. And I've talked with somebody who had a disease caused by the stress at work, and it was something serious. And the person said to me, oh, Nicolas, if in my company we add the tool you are talking about, I would be aware of what will happen to me, and I would have quit before to have this disease caused by too stress at work. So I think that it would have changed everything for me. So I think that if a company use our powerful tool and doesn't do that much for their people will leave before to be in burnout or before to be in absenteeism. So I think that it will protect the employee, and the indicator of the company will be degraded in the turnover point of view, because they will not have let's say, the resources and the time to do this corrective action, even if they were, let's say, early warning of that. So I think that, and the employee point of view, they will help them, even if the company, let's say, took too much time to let's say to move, because we know that big companies like big boat is difficult to change the direction, because it's cultural, and culture can take years. So but at least these people would be warned before it's too late, let's say.
I like what you mentioned there about having a, let's say, like a stress manager position. And I know someone who was working in a similar role to that. They were working as like a consultant in a hospital, and they were there. Their role was for, if any nurses or EMTs or anyone on duty just needed someone to talk to, or just needed someone to just be able to voice how they're feeling at work. They could come in for 15 or 20 minutes in their day and just sit down and have a cup of tea or a coffee and maybe a few biscuits and just talk about how they feel. Because working in a hospital is a very stressful environment. And the things that they would see on a day to day basis could vary from something as from changing dressing and bandages to working in the emergency room, and could be very serious. And going through all of that stress and not being able to talk about it openly had a massive toll and had a huge turnover rate. But in her position, she was able to have conversations and get people to talk about how they felt and work through those emotions, and then take action steps to improve their health and their performance over time. After about a year, she was then told, "Oh, we don't need this position in the hospital anymore. We really don't think we need it anymore. Everyone seems to be okay. Everyone, we're not seeing a turnover rate as bad as it used to be." They got rid of that position, and the turnover rate went back to as it was before they had that position. So as soon as everything got, let's say, in the green once again, they were like, "Oh, we don't need this anymore. Everything is green. Everything is fine now," and they got rid of it, and it went straight back to being in the red again. It was like, and she was no longer in a position to say, "This is why you need me."
Yeah,
And
yeah.
but she realized, she was like, I loved the work I was doing because I was having such an impact and helping these people in their daily work and to improve their performance. But again, because it wasn't being tracked as, let's say, a metric, and it was just seen as, oh, we're not seeing the same turnover rate and we're not being able to correlate it with anything. Maybe it was just, we got rid of the bad people and everyone we have now are good people and they won't leave us. As soon as they got rid of this consultancy, and or this space where people could talk about their stresses and feelings in the workplace, as soon as they got rid of that, then the turnover rate just went, it skyrocketed again.
Yes,
I
we
think it's
could even
helping people
compare.
understand the importance
Yeah, yeah, we
of
could
being
even
able to
compare
talk about these things.
we could even compare two hospitals, for example, one with this position, one without this position, and to see that the result would be different, and we would have the data. So I totally agree with you. This quantitative tool could be game changer, because it could enable people that you mentioned to, let's say, prove that their impact are significant on the team. So definitely in a daily
So
basis.
if anyone was interested in, maybe if anyone was interested in learning more about Cardyio, or if they wanted to implement this in their company, where would they go and what's the best place for them to get started with Cardyio?
Oh, I think that they could reach our website, which is cardio.com, and they can, let's say, send us an email, and we will get back to them and let's say continues our conversation. Maybe you could add the link in your
Yes, I'll add the link
podcast.
in the show notes. Yes.
Okay, so yeah, so I would definitely, I think that it could be a good starting point, and we will be able to, let's say, to understand their let's say what we can do together.